there! In this video, I'll be reviewing the OT Defense StippleTec Basic Stippling Kit. This is a kit that I purchased to stipple all of the Glocks that I've got, and now that I've stippled those 5 guns, I feel confident enough to kind of give a review of what this kit is. Before I hop into the kit itself, I do want to say that I have zero relationship with Oregon Trail Defense. They don't know me. I bought this kit as a regular customer. I actually bought it on the recommendation of one of our writers, Sean. He said that if he was going to be stippling guns, this would be the kit that he would go for, and I can see why. This is a purpose-made kit for stippling pistols. A lot of people go to Harbor Freight or Home Depot or whatever and buy a wood burner and then stipple guns with that. You can certainly do that, but this is made to be easier for stippling. So I paid about 66 bucks for the kit itself, and then I splurged for a little carrying case to hold extra bits as part of the stippling process, and then I bought an extra bit too. If we crack open the case here, when we crack it open, we have a nice like PVC box. We have a bunch of literature here, and I would recommend that you actually look at this literature that comes with the kit. It gives you little tips about how to do the stippling, how some materials work a little bit differently, and then ways to prep getting into the stippling. We also have this handy sheet here that tells you what all of their tips are, which includes ones that come in this kit here, and how aggressive they are and how hard they are to use. So if you buy one of these, hold on to the literature because it's actually pretty handy. As we look inside the box itself, it'll ship with the burner, a little stand for the burner, which is quite handy, a couple of little plastic tubes here to hold all of the extra bits, and then if you're like me and you splurge for the bit kit, it fits right into the cavity right here. Fairly simple. We get quite a few bits with part of the kit. However, the two that I use the most includes one, if I can show it here, one that shipped with the kit. This is a 20 LPI circular burning head, and then this one here, which did not. This one is a square 20 LPI burning head with an angled cut. That makes it easier to kind of shore up the angles there. Let's put that out of the way here and look at the burner itself. This is honestly the best part about this, which, you know, duh, this is like the most important thing in the kit here. And if we kind of zoom in there, StippleTec OT Defense, 25 watt burner. The big thing is that it's short. This makes it a lot easier to get real close up on the thing you're trying to stipple. A lot of them are going to be, 2, 3, 4 inches longer than this, and it's kind of a pain to use. 25 watts is going to be a little bit weaker than a lot of other burners too. However, I find that that gives you a little bit more grace for actually doing the stippling, especially if you're not a professional stippler, right? One of the big things here too with this kit is that all the components are US made. That might matter to you. You might not care about it. I think it's pretty nifty, but it's, it's one of those things that the people who like it will really like it, and those that don't really care about it will just be ambivalent about it. I'm happy to support US made stuff when I can. So we have the burner kit here, and I found it to be very handy, but I did a little bit more besides just this kit. And this is stuff that I'd recommend that you get before you start doing any stippling. I would recommend a wire brush. The wire brush will help you to clean the heads. As you can see from the ones I had here, let me fish one back out. It's fairly black colored, and that's because you're literally melting plastic. This lets you scrape it in between sessions of actually stippling the gun. So that way you have a nice, neat, clean pattern. So wire brush, good to have. The other thing I'd seriously recommend is that you tape up your magazines. Not all of them, of course. It's not like you're going to be running them in the gun like this. But we do this because when we're stippling the gun, we're literally applying a ton of heat to it to get that pattern in there, right? This is going to keep the gun from warping. You don't want to have the frame pinching. I actually had an issue with one of the guns where I didn't apply enough layers of aluminum foil to the magazine I had in there, and it warped in a little bit. And that added like an hour into my stippling time because I had to grab my heat gun and then add more layers of tape to the magazine to unwarp it to get it back so the magazines would drop in and drop out just fine. So I would seriously recommend that you do that. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the stippling, and I'm not going to show you how to stipple here, but I'm giving you some tips that helped me. Take your time. This is not a task that you want to rush. It doesn't mean it's going to take you 8 or 9 hours to stipple the gun, but you want to try to do this when you know you're not going to be interrupted. You can stop the stippling, take a break if you need to, but I found that doing the entire gun in roughly a day was the best way to do it. So I've got 5 Glocks here. I'm going to show you the ones I did in the order that I did and kind of explain why I did them the way I did. The first gun is my 48. This is the 48 that I've had a lot here on the channel. I've got close to 15,000 rounds for this pistol, and I finally wanted to stipple it because I found that it was just starting to get so slick. The pattern I did, again, is that 20 LPI pattern. I used the circular head for the sides, and then the square head for the front and back, but also for the bottom of the trigger guard and up the side of the pistol. I didn't go for fancy bordering or anything. I just wanted texture. I do recommend that you remove the magazine release and a mag well when you do your stippling. The magazine release will just get in the way, but also when you're foiling up your mags to keep the frame from warping, that's going to be an issue. And then for the mag well, I wanted to stipple beneath where the mag well is. That way if I rip the mag well off the gun, it's still stippled under there. With this, I have a great aggressive texture. I think they rated this as like smack dab in the middle of aggressiveness. Certainly more aggressive than the OEM one, and I've got more of it because I filled in the gaps on the diagonals where the texturing wasn't there. But I really dig it. I can lock my hands in quite good on this gun. This is my gun that warped. It's not got any issues now. Magazines drop in and out just fine again. But I had to take my heat gun and open it back up. Kind of a pain, but not the biggest issue. The second gun I went for is my Gen 2 Glock 17. This is a gun that was in desperate need of more texture. And again, I'm happy with how it turned out. Not necessarily the prettiest stipple job, and I might go back in and do a couple of little rounds of touch-ups, you know, shoring up edges. But the texture on this is so fantastic. Same deal as the 48. I removed the mag well and stippled underneath of there. I'm actually tempted to stipple part of the mag well itself because it's just plastic to give me a little bit more grip, especially for the pinky down at the bottom. I can go a little bit higher up on the larger frame pistols because they're not as thin at the top as the slim guns are. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. This is a gun that I like a lot, but I wasn't finding that I was shooting it much in the summer because of how sweaty I would get out in the desert. This gun felt like holding a bar of soap that shot bullets, so didn't want to do that. For the oddest gun that I stippled, I have my Glock 42 here. This gun was an odd gun to stipple because the material of the frame actually melted to a different temperature. This frame wanted to melt at a lower point. And with stippling, it's all about time, pressure, and heat. And I found that this required less time to actually start melting the pattern in there, which meant that I had to take more time when I was stippling the gun. I had to go slower, that way I wouldn't be going too quick or too deep here. But now it feels extra great in the hand. The 42 is already a gun I've been shooting a ton, and with more texture on there, it's fantastic. And I actually went through and stippled the floor plates to all of my Pierce +1 extensions plus the Vickers extension I use in this gun. That made a big difference. And one thing, I don't think I touched on it when I was talking preparation, practice before you go right to the guns. I mean, this is a pretty obvious thing, like don't immediately stipple the thing that is basically irreplaceable in the gun. I went and started with floor plates. Some people might say PMags or this or that. I did the Glock floor plates because it's the same material as the frame itself. It feels a little bit different, but it's the same polymer blend, at least based on the research I did. And I found that this was a great way to practice stippling before getting to the guns. For gun number 4, I have my Glock 45. This one doesn't have a mag well, so you can actually see the work I did at the bottom here. And I'm very happy with how this one turned out. I think this was probably, this and the next gun are the two cleanest ones I did. Which makes sense because they were the two last ones I did. Again, the 20 LPI straight pattern on the front and back of the gun, circular one on the side. I went up fairly high because I wanted to get all the way up to where the webbing of my hand meat is gripping there. And again, it feels so good. It's just locked into the hand fantastically here. And for the last pistol, I have my Glock 43X. Again, I couldn't go quite as high on these slim guns. I found that they wanted to kind of warp in more. It's very thin beneath where the slide releases are on both sides of the pistol, but the texture is great. Removed the mag well when I did it, and I stippled real deep, or not deep, but real low on the gun. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. So would I recommend stippling your pistols? Obviously, it's up to you. I'm not someone who really cares about the warranty on these guns because, truth be told, I know I'm not going to really need to use the Glock warranty. With me already modifying the slides with milling and other sorts of work, I'm not worried about the warranty. But this is a significantly better thing to do than to get like the Talon grip tape or to wrap this in hockey tape or something. This is a permanent thing. This is a thing that you can go and touch up and change over time. It's a hard thing to change the pattern that's already stippled into the gun. But since when you're melting this, you're just moving plastic, it's not that hard to do. I will say that this was an easier task than what I expected, but I'm someone who's fairly mechanically inclined, and I work on guns pretty often, so it wasn't that much of a hard task for me. But overall, I'm happy with how the guns turned out, and I would very easily recommend the Oregon Trail Defense Stippling Kit. I had to remember the name of the company there. This is their basic kit. The more expensive kits give you an option for a different wattage for the burner, so more power to it. And then they come with more of the stippling heads, but you can also just buy all of the stippling heads a la carte. That's why I bought that 20 LPI finishing head. And I think the basic kit makes the most sense unless you're trying to be a professional stippler. And if that's the case, you know, buy the professional one and go whole hog on it. For me, with my 5 guns, I've certainly gotten my money's worth. Getting one of these guns stippled on its own would have been, I don't know, 150 bucks, 200 bucks. And I paid 80 bucks for the kit and the extra head, and I stippled 5 guns, and I'm content with the work there. So, yeah, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below what you think of how the stippling turned out. Would you stipple your own gun? Let me know that. And let me know how you think the video work here is. I'm trying a different camera for some of my tabletop stuff. This is actually the camera that I use for my still photography, so it should be a little bit more depth. The microphone's the same, the SD card's the same, and of course my editing software is the same. But let me know how the camera did. Would you prefer it if I went back to the old camera? If so, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching.